Welcome to the Right to Reason podcast. I'm your host, Robert Stanley. Former American atheist president David Silverman was accused of sexual assault and fired from his position after an article from BuzzFeed that quoted an unnamed victim who said this. He physically pressed me to the wall and began to kiss me forcefully, grabbed my breast, and put his hand into my leggings where there was actual penetration of my vagina. She referred to him calling her, I quote, a dirty little whore. She said that he pushed her to her knees where, I quote, his penis briefly made contact with my mouth. She claimed that she said, I quote, no, and then Silverman slapped her face and said, I quote, you don't get to say no to me. Before his accusation, Silverman said this on this broadcast.
On the subject of sexual assault, I noticed here recently, Roy S. Moore, this is from New York Times, Roy S. Moore on Monday was accused of sexually assaulting someone that was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And this is when he was in his, I want to say it was his mid-30s. Beverly Young Nelson told news reporters that, there's a quote, I tried fighting him off while yelling at him to stop, but instead of stopping, he began squeezing my neck, attempting to force my hand into his crotch, and it goes on and on and gets pretty graphic, but really sad. And of course we know that's wrong, and it is possible that accusation isn't true. We don't want to take that typical route of just assuming that things are false as soon as we hear them, because that's what got us into this.
Holy shit! No, I assume that things are true. I believe the victim.
Absolutely.
No. We don't do the whole assume that things are false. That's what the evangelicals do.
He is now not only denying the claims that he raped multiple women, but is also suing his accusers along with American atheists as well. While on Atheist Republic, our friend Armin Navabi asked him this.
I think this is a podcast, Right to Reason. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
No.
Yeah, I think it was a podcast or a YouTube channel. And I think he was talking to you about cancel culture. Mm-hmm. And this was before the allegations. And he asked you about the believing women, believing victims of rape when they come up with the allegations. Mm-hmm. And he said that should we be skeptical, wait for evidence and stuff. And you said, holy shit, no. I assume that things are true. I believe the victim. We don't do the whole thing, assume things are false thing. That's what the evangelicals do. So do you believe in that stuff?
I can't. I mean, yes, believe the victim. Believe the victim has a reason, okay? And the reason is that there's a negative force stopping women from coming out and naming predators. And so for that reason, it's completely legitimate to believe the women when they come out with an allegation. But we can't assume that every woman is nice and good, and we can't assume that every woman is healthy mentally, and we can't eliminate due process. We can't walk away from due process. And I was believing the victim for a long freaking time until two women lied on me.
So is that a bit hypocritical though?
No, it's learning.
But what would you say to people that would think that this is such an obvious thing that you didn't need that to happen to you before realizing that you need evidence before believing in something?
Call it what you will, it's the truth. I didn't think the number of women who would falsify a report was significant. And I'm going to say 95% of the women who make reports are telling the truth. But we have to have some humanism here. We have to have some skepticism, because that 5% are taking down innocent people.
Since that recording, David Silverman has been a guest on multiple podcasts. This celebrity-like reemergence has angered many within the atheist community that thought he was a forgotten and discarded villain of the Me Too movement. His recent appearance on Sargon of Akkad's podcast pushed the left-leaning SJW atheists over the line.
You know, feminism has kind of changed underneath me.
Yes.
And, you know, I talk a lot about, you know, if you don't have a belief in a God, call yourself an atheist because you are one, and it doesn't matter how much that definition can't change. But what I've realized over the past, really even over the past couple of months and even over the past week, is that feminism has changed. Atheism hasn't changed. You can't change what atheism is, but you can change what feminism is. And this whole idea of ditching due process and using feminism as a weapon to get even with man, and to use it as a weapon to stop conversation and just to, I'm going to take away civil rights, and joyfully do it so. Joyfully.
They're fixing the world. They're taking the counter-revolutionary forces out and shooting them in the back of the head.
They really are.
Shamus and John of the Free Thought Prophet responded to this by having David as a guest on their show, where he shared this recording.
Not acting in a calm, rational manner.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but for those that don't know, it was pretty clear that they were in a somewhat open relationship as well. Right. So this wasn't like you stole her away for a night, so to speak. Okay, no, so this wasn't.
I did know he vetoed us playing. He vetoed me playing with. He vetoed me having any sort of sexual relations with, and wanted to do it anyways. And so he has legitimate grievance. So that's a true thing. However, they were poly, and he talked to me in that conversation. He talked to me like you would talk to somebody who had fucked your wife without your permission. Okay. Not like somebody. Here, let me play this for you. Let me
sure.
This for you. Okay, this will just take a minute for me to find.
No problem.
I want you to just think while I'm looking at it, while I'm finding this, I want you to think of, are either of you two married?
I am. John is currently. I'm happily divorced.
Okay, John, so just imagine I sexually assaulted your wife.
Okay.
Okay? And I grabbed her and I gave her black and blue marks, and she didn't like it, and it was really non-consensual. Imagine how it would be 2 years after that. I get you in a room and I say, hey, John, how are you and me?
Uh-huh.
Okay? Imagine how you would react.
Yeah.
Okay? Just listen to this.
Okay. So after that lengthy discussion, how are we? We're pretty okay on the things that I actually care about and want to talk about. We're fine.
Okay.
But
if you ever want to talk about other things.
Nope.
Okay.
Past is done.
Okay.
I got more shit to do and more important stuff to do. And there are people that I wouldn't share a stage with for various reasons. You aren't one of them.
Okay.
Keep working for the best of our American atheists and the movement. And I'm sure we'll fight on some shit from time to time.
Sure.
And I'm far happier to fight with people who I know are trying to do the right thing for the movement than for, Dan.
That's not how you talk to somebody who molested your wife.
That's true. That wouldn't be the conversation we would be having in that circumstance.
Yesterday, David Silverman was appointed the executive director of Atheist Alliance International. And today, Felicia Entwistle and John and Shamus of the Free Thought Prophet will be debating the ethics of platforming Silverman.
It's the Right to Reason podcast.
They couldn't go to the police. There's no way they could have gone to the police with that stuff.
Why not?
Because it's really difficult to prove rape.
We are not interested in BDSM. If we were, we would have.
This is about rape. How many times do I have to say it? He used BDSM and he raped her according to this woman.
So you say.
But you are uninterested and you do not care about this issue.
So you say. Are you done? Can I talk now? Do I need a safe word to talk?
Wow, that was really insensitive.
I'm sure it was.
Lying about this on a large-scale problem, but there is a large-scale problem of men raping women and getting away with it, and you don't account for that. You are being a bad skeptic.
I should be allowed to say who I want to fucking talk to and
You
not
are
have
allowed
to answer.
to.
Thank
No,
you.
you are. I'm sorry.
I'm allowed to say
You don't want to answer for the things you do. You don't want consequences.
I said I will talk to who I want to, no matter what anybody thinks. That's not the same thing.
You are allowed to do that, but
Thank you.
I'm allowed to say, fuck you. You can have whoever you want on your show, and the consequences be damned, because you're not going to have to live with them. And the hurt and the pain that you perpetuate and the way that you delegitimize sexual assault accusations doesn't matter to you. And you don't care.
Can I ask another question?
I'm done.
Sorry,
I'm done.
Felicia,
I am done.
Felicia,
I am
can I ask
done.
one more question, please?
No, I am done.
So close, no matter how far. Couldn't be much more from the heart. Forever trusting who we are, and nothing else matters.
This episode of the Right to Reason podcast is brought to you by our patrons and contributors like me. We have all recognized the value of the unrestrained marketplace of ideas and have decided to make a difference. You can make a difference too. Contribute at patreon.com/right and learn more about your right to reason at therighttoreason.com. Your activism is appreciated.
Joining us from Utah outcast Felicia Entwistle and John Hamill and Shamus from the Free Thought Prophet. Folks, I'm so happy to have you here.
Well, thank
Good to be here. Thanks for having us.
So we had, let's see, just so much Me Too stuff with the atheist movement. I mean, it happened with just about every movement out there, but it was very peculiar when it came to ours, because everybody seemed to side up either on the I'm skeptical of the accusation side or I support the women's side. And well, you guys probably know there's more names than just Richard Carrier. There was
Lawrence Krauss.
Lawrence Krauss, yeah. Michael Shermer, David Silverman. You guys just had Dave on your show over at the Free Thought Prophet, and you caught some flack from that. I noticed, like, some folks were like, "Hey, why are you having this guy on? You know, he's a rapist." So
we had Krauss and Shermer and Carrier too.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
we've also had oh crap, as soon as I wanted to say his name, I completely lost it.
So how many women have you had on? How many how many women who have been their victims who are public about it have you had on?
Well, we kind of pick guests based on the specific secular issues that we want to talk about, and that includes a bunch of women. So if I'm honest, Felicia, I haven't done a count. I can name some off the top of my head. I think the last time we were asked this was in the summer when we had, I can't remember if it was Carrier or Shermer on, but we counted up in the summer, and from January 2019 to summer 2019, we had more women than men. I don't know if that would be the case if we counted up all our episodes, but to be honest, we make no effort to kind of equalize based on identity issues. You know, we don't pick guests based on trying to fill quotas or anything like that.
That's not what I asked.
Yeah. You asked how many women we've had on. The answer is I can't answer as an integer, but quite a few.
No. A few of the women who have accused these men are publicly known, and that we know who they are, and or they're prominent, or people who were aware of the story from the beginning. we're aware you could have invited those women on to talk about the issue. Did you? You talked to the men who were accused. Did you talk to any of the victims?
No, I mean, they're welcome to come on, but if I'm honest, but we didn't talk about the details of the issue at all. Personally, I read, I don't know, about half of the stuff on David's blog in terms of his perspective on the story. I found it very difficult to read. I don't want to get into the details of what happens in someone else's bedroom, so we didn't really discuss the details with David of what happened.
You didn't ask about the details, but the details are very important. Why wouldn't you ask about the fact that, like, about talking about BDSM safe words before you engage in BDSM? Why wouldn't you talk about the context and what constitutes consent? Why wouldn't you have those kinds of discussions?
Well,
because
they're important to you, Felicia, but it's not important to me. We never talked about BDSM in any way, shape, or form.
I'm sorry, did you just say that if he raped someone, that's unimportant to you?
No, that's not what he said at all.
I said BDSM is unimportant to me. I know nothing about BDSM. I don't want to know anything about BDSM. We never talked to David about BDSM. So the issue of safe words with respect to BDSM might be important to you, but it's not important to me.
No, it's important about consent. How do you gain consent for BDSM? You have to have a discussion of what boundaries are, and you have to have a discussion of what safe words are. And the fact is that when she told him to stop, he didn't until she used what is largely known as a safe word, but she had not had a discussion about her boundaries for BDSM, about sex, about having sex at all. And he did not stop until she used a safe word. That is violating consent. He forcibly penetrated her. And then, without any previous discussion, she had to resort to a safe word to make him stop, which means he raped her. He raped her because they did not discuss consent or sex at all previously.
Okay, if we back up just for 1 second here, to kind of back up what John is saying, we didn't engage in those questions. Now, that's not to say that these things did not come up. David pretty much just went into somewhat of a narrative of some of the things that occurred. Largely, they were not, invited by us because primarily we were just focused on other issues related to him. Not saying that isn't, as far as the accusations to him weren't important, but it's not like we wanted to get into the details of spitting in somebody's mouth and how that is good or bad, because that's not
about good or bad. That is not it. It's about consent. It's about rape. Why is that so uninteresting to you? And why are you so unconcerned with legitimizing the story of a rapist if he did these things, which we have good reason to believe he did?
Do we?
Yes.
Why do we?
Why don't you believe the multiple people? Why would 3 women lie?
3?
Yeah, there's 3 accusations. Did you know that?
But the issue is, Felicia, what you're describing, as you know, David would have a different perspective, and he wouldn't.
Yeah, it's almost like, if somebody raped, they would be very concerned with making it appear as if they didn't.
Yeah, so you have one perspective, and lots of different people have other perspectives. And
don't give me that bullshit. That's a bullshit answer. Oh, there is no such thing as truth. Other people have other feelings.
Well, hang on, Felicia. Real. Hang on. If you could just let me give my answer rather than you giving me my answer for me. What I was about to say was that whereas you have your perspective on what happened and David has his, and they're not the same, I'm not saying I believe David, but I'm not saying I believe you either. What I'm saying is it's not my job to decide. It's not my job to say one person's telling the truth and another person's lying. I'm not playing that role. I'm not picking sides. But
by not picking sides, you are picking sides. You're legitimizing and platforming someone who did something heinous and saying that there should not be consequences for it, that he's accused of, and he's credibly accused 3 separate times.
Okay,
and
glad
you're
you said
saying
accused because you keep saying that we are legitimizing and platforming somebody who did heinous things, but without saying that they are accused of. So therefore, we don't even know if these things actually happened.
We can come to a reasonable conclusion. Just because it can't be proved in a court of law does not mean that we can't come to a reasonable conclusion.
Sure, but this is all going to be played out in a court of law because of his lawsuit. So shouldn't we
his
all
lawsuit
wait?
Doesn't, his
shouldn't
lawsuit
we all
has nothing
wait?
to do with the rapes.
Yes,
his
it
lawsuit.
does.
No, it doesn't. He's
does.
suing.
He's challenging
suing
the credibility of the people who made these claims and he's challenging their claims.
Oh, lovely.
Is he not? I'm just asking.
No, the lawsuit is to American atheists who did not fire him for the sexual assault allegations.
And he's also naming at least 2 of the victims and one of the victims' husbands.
Yeah, I think, he's suing. Before I say this, are we all comfortable with me using the names of these people, or would that be?
Yeah, it's already released, so I don't see why not.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Whatever. I guess it's. Let's just target more harassment at these women. That sounds good.
Felicia, you think I should avoid using names?
I do. I don't see why we need to be spreading that information far and wide.
All right. He's suing American atheists because they said that he. They didn't actually, if I recall, they didn't give a reason for why they were terminating him, but there was some rumors that
it was for misuse of funds for self-promoting his book.
Oh, that's
misuse of funds of the organization.
That's right. And then I know he's suing 2 other people for sure. One that made the accusation, and then the husband of that person.
See, that's exactly. Tell me exactly what it is that would motivate someone to lie about something like this. Like, why on earth would someone lie about this?
I have absolutely no idea, but what it comes back to is when you said, Felicia, that by not taking sides, we're taking sides, and I just don't agree with that. I think it's perfectly valid to say there is a conflicting narrative here. There's multiple people with multiple different stories, and it's not my job to decide what the truth is.
Isn't that a part of skepticism? Is making reasonable conclusions based on evidence?
Sure. Isn't it being skeptical of anybody that's making a claim, including the victims?
Yeah, but there's not just one victim, is there? There's 3, and there are multiple people who say that they were told about these at the time of the occurrence.
Sure, and he has multiple people to back up his claims to the otherwise. So we could do this all day, right?
Okay,
sure.
But that's the thing, is that he has something to gain by lying, whereas their lives are being horribly affected through harassment, through lawsuits now, when they didn't take a lawsuit to him. They couldn't go to the police. There's no way they could have gone to the police with that stuff.
Why not?
Because it's really difficult to prove rape.
Sure, but people do file rape charges against people every day.
Okay, do you understand what goes into when you accuse someone of rape? Do you understand how horrible it is?
Yes.
Do you?
Yes.
So then, and the fact that you are most likely not going to be believed, that you are going to be scrutinized in everything that you did when you are already a victim and traumatized. I don't understand how you don't hear this. How you don't hear 3 women with 3 different stories and more people backing them up with how horribly common rape is, how every single woman you know has some story of being violated in some way, and you say, no, I don't need to hold any man accountable because it's not my job.
That's an unfair assessment.
How can you do that?
That's not what I said, Felicia.
Yeah, that's totally unfair.
How is that unfair? You're like, it's not my job to determine the truth. It's just, it's totally good to have him on my show and let him tell his story.
Hang on, Felicia. So there's 2 different things. There's one thing which is determining what happened, what's the truth, who's right, who's wrong, when there's conflicting opinions. And there's a different thing which is holding people to account once we know what happened. So when you said it's not my job to hold rapists to account or something like that, that's just putting words in people's mouth. That's not what was said.
Okay, you don't take seriously what the accusations are, clearly. And you don't care to take them seriously because you're embarrassed by BDSM talk?
We didn't say that either.
No, what happens in somebody else's bedroom is none of your business, even if it's a credible accusation of sexual assault. Like, I don't understand how you don't take this seriously. How you don't take these women seriously.
Okay,
why
do you have an actual question to make to either of us, or just you're going to make blanket assertions and assume our positions on these? Because that's all you've been doing since we started.
Yeah, I'm going to say to you, you did something wrong. You did something insulting.
First off, to clarify, I know of two Felicia. One victim says she was drunk and that he took advantage of her. Another person said that they were kind of goofing around a little bit. But
No, she didn't. No, she didn't. That's not what the accusation is. I just reread it to make sure that I was clear on it.
Oh, okay.
The
I thought
accusation
the BDSM one was
is that
he went too
pushed
far.
her against a wall, choked her, slapped her.
Okay. Well, I thought that was started off that way. Oh, hey, you all right? You want to stop?
What you guys did is causing pain, and I don't know how you don't see it or care. I don't know how you can be so concerned with him getting his story out and not listening to what happened. I don't know. This shit happens every day.
I'm really sorry you're upset, Felicia. I didn't mean to upset you at all. Look, I just guess that from my perspective, when there's an accusation made and when there's no kind of consensus in what the truth is.
How many false accusations are there? How common is false accusations?
I have no idea.
Not. It happens virtually never.
Well, hang on.
Really?
I mean, it does happen. Yes, everybody lies. Don't you know that? I mean,
please go look into the statistics on this one.
Well, okay, I'll give you a case right now. How about the Johnny Depp situation? His wife claimed abuse, sexual assault, and all these things. He had video evidence. He had audio evidence. He had eyewitnesses that all backed up that she was the one being the abuser.
Women
can lie. Women can lie. Okay,
there's
so
also
it
evidence
does happen.
that he was an abuser too. That also happens. Like, what are you talking? You're just gonna sit here and say women can lie, but when we
that's
have
not the argument.
preponderance of evidence that women are not lying about this on a large scale problem, but there is a large scale problem of
And I'm
men
not saying it's
raping
not.
women and getting away with it, and you don't account for that. You are being a bad skeptic. The preponderance of evidence shows that women are not lying about this, but men are getting away with raping men and women, and no one's doing anything about it.
I don't disagree with that, but I also would say that you're being a bad skeptic by just believing every woman that
I
cries.
didn't say I was. What did I?
So I didn't say it the other way either. You've been putting words in our mouth ever since we started this. Okay?
I am not.
Again, you're no. You have been putting assertions out since we started this. Again, ask questions. Don't just tell us what we've done or didn't do. Ask us fucking questions, or there's no point in this. I'm sorry, there's just not. I don't mean to do that to you, Rob, but I mean this is.
No one says straight to you what you did was fucking shitty.
Sure, we've been called all kinds of things, but that doesn't. But just claiming that we did something horrible by having somebody on that's being accused of raping people doesn't.
Credibly accused.
Well, you say credibly accused. I may say otherwise.
Okay,
somebody else may not. Maybe I agree. Maybe I don't.
Why is it not credible? Go ahead, tell me why is it not credible? Because
okay, well, let me tell you this with answering just a blanket statement, okay? Because we've had Silverman, we've had Krause, we've had Shermer, we've had Carrier. Yeah, all of them have been
a lot of men who are credibly accused, and statistically, they're more like at least one of them. Statistically, at least one of them did it.
Can I finish? Okay, we invited them on for other reasons other than the fact that they were involved in any sort of allegations. Okay, we all thought
were accused.
I'm sorry.
Did you do it after they were accused?
We did it as part of the podcast in a linear fashion.
We invited Silverman before he was accused of anything.
Yeah,
you invited Silverman over a year ago.
Yeah, he didn't agree to come on before because of shit that was going on with him personally.
Oh, right. He didn't agree to come on before, but now that he's trying to make a comeback.
Well, again, you can attack his credibility, his character. That's fine, but you're not. You're attacking us. Okay. My point is that
you did
all the people. Again, can I talk? Okay, I'm trying to explain to you why we have people on the show, because we fucking decide who's going to come on the show, and we decide what we're going to talk about. And I don't think I have to answer to anybody as to far who we talk to or don't talk to, because that's what we want to do. But the people we invited on weren't because, oh great, they've been accused of sexual assault. I mean, if that was the case, I'd have fucking Bill Cosby on by now. Okay, we don't. Why? Because Krauss, Silverman, all these people have other things to talk about that are interesting. I mean, if fucking Albert Einstein raped 18 people, would you not think that he had to validate? Would you not want to talk to him? Would you not want to know his knowledge?
No, I would not want to talk to him. No, I think that there should be social consequences for that. I cannot believe that you just said that. I cannot believe you're like, you know what? We should still, they're still really interesting people, and we should still give them extra respect, and there should be no social consequences whatsoever for rape, because they still have interesting things to talk about.
I didn't say that there shouldn't be consequences. I just said that I would still want to talk to them. There's a difference.
Yeah, that just shows you don't care. You don't care about these women.
No, that's your claim.
About this, you don't.
That's your claim. That's not mine.
That's my claim, and I'm using your own words here as my evidence.
Okay, so society as a whole should take a backdrop because somebody's been accused of something. So if somebody had the cure for cancer, somebody had the way to absolutely eliminate global warming without a bat of an eye, but because they are accused of a sexual assault, they should be deplatformed, put on a misfit island, and never talked to. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you don't need to have them on your show. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that
no, that's not an answer. That's not an answer.
That's
not an answer.
Yeah, I think you should take some responsibility for who you platform and what speech you put out there and what messages you send.
So that's true, Felicia.
You have a responsibility to the ideas that you communicate.
That's true, Felicia. So there's one thing which is kind of thought experiments about, what Shamus described there, if Einstein was still alive or whatever happened to be. What we're talking about here is something different. It's not a thought experiment. It's an actual specific case. So we can talk about Krauss or Shermer or Carrier or Silverman.
Statistically, it is likely that they all did it.
You've already said that.
Yeah.
Said that. Let us make our points and we can
move
on.
But Felicia,
you just keep having these guys on, is all I'm saying. That's really interesting. And you don't seem to care when people say you are doing something harmful.
Felicia.
You are doing something harmful.
Felicia, statistically, it's very likely that someone on this call has done something very awful. So statistics are one thing, but we shouldn't use statistics to condemn individuals. We shouldn't condemn one individual person because statistically something happens in the population.
Then? Did someone on the show rape someone? Because then, I am out.
But again, I come back to it again, Felicia. You're making allegations of rape, but David would have a different perspective.
Yeah, and my abusive ex-husband would say that he was the real victim in the marriage. I don't care. I don't know what point you're trying to make there. Yeah, of course he's going to say he didn't do it.
If you would let me get a sentence out, I can try and explain what the point is. The point is that outside of Shamus's kind of thought experiments, if, Einstein was alive or whatever, in the very specific cases that we're talking about, I think whereas we can consider specific cases in which there are he said, she said type situations, it's not my job to come down on one side or another, and it's not my job to condemn people based on statistics.
But by having them on the show, especially at the times when they are trying to discredit people and regain legitimacy, you are taking a side. You've taken their side. You have done that.
No,
You've taken their side. You don't have to have them on your show.
Sorry, I mean,
they are
look,
exonerated.
hang on, Felicia.
But that is
Felicia,
taking a side, isn't it? Okay.
hang on, Felicia, please. I mean, you again, you say there, because we have them on the show, we're taking their side. I mean, on the actual show, we specifically said that. We specifically said we're not coming to a view on one side or another, because how could I possibly do that? How could I possibly know who's telling the truth and who's not? And one thing I would suggest is informative in this context is one of the core legal principles that everyone learns in Law School 101 is that it's better for 100 murderers to go free than for one person to be wrongly convicted of murder.
Yeah, but he's not in jail, and not having him on your show is not putting him in jail, is it?
Can I finish the sentence? Can I finish the sentence?
You've had several sentences, man.
Well,
you just keep repeating the same thing. Let him finish.
What I would like to say is, if that's the case, that as you say, let's say, for example, there's only 1% of accusations of rape which are manufactured. Even if that's the case, we still shouldn't condemn someone if they're the victim of an accusation.
I don't see how not having him on your show.
Do you think you should do away with trials altogether, Felicia? Well, answer me this. Here's a specific question, Felicia. Here's a specific question. When there's an accusation of sexual assault, why should we have a trial? Why shouldn't we just lock a guy up in jail right away? Why bother the trial?
Because that's not how justice can be achieved. But
well done.
You
that's
are
the right
not
answer.
a court of
well
law,
done.
are you? You're not a court of law, are you?
Precisely my point. I'm not a court of law. It's not my job to decide. That's precisely my point. Thank you.
No, you do have a social responsibility, though. You do have a social responsibility here. And he's not owed a platform. He's not entitled to a platform.
Correct.
So you are and he is in a specific mode right now. You know that he is trying to gain extra credibility, that he's trying to get back in the public eye, and you know that he is trying to discredit his accusers, and you know that statistically it is unlikely for all of the accusations to both, sure, not both, but there's 3. They didn't detail the third one because I think she refused to speak to the reporter. But there was 3 complaints filed. And so you are choosing to ignore all of that and just say, I have no responsibility socially for who comes on my platform.
I didn't say that, Felicia. I didn't say that. I said I have no responsibility to decide what's the truth, whose version of events is most accurate.
You do have a social responsibility, especially considering how much this happens and that there is almost no justice. Almost no justice. Ever.
Well, that may well be true.
And you don't care. And you don't care. But
again,
you did.
Sorry,
you did,
Felicia.
No,
sorry, Felicia.
Finish.
That's just mind reading now. When you're saying I don't care, you're trying to read my mind. I do care. And
really?
It's not up to you to decide.
You really care. You really care about all of these accusations, and you think that they should be taken seriously, but at the same time, after the accusations are out, you want to let them on to have their side, to speak about whatever they want to talk about, even though you know that it is not
Can I ask, what exactly is it that you're saying to me here, Felicia? Are you saying I don't care about women who are raped, and I don't care about rape? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that by your behavior, yeah, you don't. Based on your behavior, you do not care.
I'm entirely. Your view is that I'm entirely sanguine about women getting raped. I don't care about that at all, and that bothers me not a jot. That's your view of the world.
Based on your behavior, yeah. I think that you will excuse
hang on. What you're saying is once someone has been accused of something, we must immediately assume that it's true.
That's not what I said, is it?
Well,
absolutely are.
No, I'm not. See, that's exactly the straw man that people who back them up go with. Because that's not what's going on here. What's going on here is that there was, at least in the first accusation, she detailed the abuse. She had bruises. She told someone the day after. She told another person a couple weeks later, and she started Facebook messaging the night it happened to somebody else, and they all independently verified that yes, they were told about this. In the other accusation where she was drunk and she did not feel like she could consent, and she felt like he took advantage of her and he pressured her into anal sex without a condom, then told her she had to get out early because his wife would be there. After all of that, she also told people who also independently verified that with journalists. That is enough for you to go, wow, that's a lot. I don't think that it would be wise of me to give him extra airtime because it seems credible that these accusations seem pretty credible, because it's very, very difficult to prove rape at all. But with the kind of with the evidence that we have and knowing how common these things are, it seems likely, and the dangers that women face when they come forward with accusations, it seems reasonable that this guy probably did something pretty bad, and maybe I shouldn't be granting my platform. Maybe, just maybe, and then maybe say that every time one of these comes up, because this wasn't just somebody on the internet going, yeah, he raped me. No, this was a thorough investigation. This was journalists doing a thorough investigation. This wasn't just any accusation. There is more evidence than that, and you know it.
Well, I think that's where we disagree, Felicia, when you said this guy, we should be thinking this guy did something really bad and therefore we shouldn't give him a platform. I'm not ready to be judge, jury, and executioner. And
so it's not execution. Why would you go to that hyperbolic place? I'm saying.
Well, it's just a figure of speech, Felicia. Obviously, I'm not saying that we're going to execute David Silverman. It's just a figure of speech.
Okay, but you're acting as if he's suffering enormously by not being granted.
I never said he was suffering or implied it. Again, you're just putting words in my mouth.
Okay, you don't have to have him on your show. That's it. There are a lot of interesting people out there with a lot of really cool ideas. You didn't have to have him on your show. You just didn't. So to say well, there's some really cool people to have some cool ideas. There's also a lot of cool people who aren't credibly accused of sexual assault. So
that's true. And what it comes down to is exactly what you said. Allegations have been made, and as you said, we should assume that they're true. And
that's not what I said. I said, look at the case. I said, look at the case and go, wow, there's a lot of reasons to take these allegations very seriously. That's what I said.
What if we looked at it skeptically? What if we looked at it skeptically and, again, hypothetically, and this is not true, what if we looked at it and we said, oh, Dave is absolutely innocent. Dave has gotten a raw deal. We want Dave on the show. That is not true. That's not what we did. But what if we did that? What is the difference from you? What is the difference from you? I mean, because again,
in doing that, I don't see a difference.
So even if we looked at it skeptically and we came to a conclusion it's opposite of you, then we're still the asshole? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that I don't know how you could have come to that conclusion.
Sure. Plenty of people think about that when they look at the sky and they say it's blue too, right? I mean, come on.
But the sky is also sometimes orange and sometimes red and sometimes pink. So I don't know what point you're making. When we're talking about this specific case, I don't know what point you're making.
But you aren't talking about the specific case. You keep generalizing this case with all cases.
No,
I did not.
I absolutely did.
You keep throwing out the statistics say this, the statistics say that.
Yeah,
again,
because that's a part of it. Because this case doesn't exist in a vacuum, does it?
Well, you just said ago a minute it did. We have to look at the case by itself. Did you not?
No, that's not. Okay, looking at a reality with context around it is not the same thing as saying, okay, all rape accusations are true. That's not even. No, we're saying that in the context in which this case exists, the relevant data about the commonality of these things is things that we need to take into account. That is part of evidence. It's like you can't, like, if somebody is accused of murder, but there's no context in which they could murder, then that's not reasonable. But if there's a context in which backs up the reality of situations, that is relevant context. See, but that's what I'm saying. So go ahead and tell me another reason to just keep having these guys on your show.
No, what I was going to try and do is highlight the specific area where I think we're kind of talking past each other a little, and that is you have specific views on the context in terms of the statistics, which is entirely valid, and you have specific views about different pieces of evidence, and that's all entirely valid. And I think your frustration seems to be that you're coming to different conclusions from us in terms of what the likely truth of the matter is. And where I think we're talking past each other is that I'm not trying to argue against that by saying, no, I come to a different conclusion for these different reasons. What I'm trying to say is I'm not even getting into any of that. My perspective is it's not my job to come to a conclusion. So when you provide information on statistics and talk about specific pieces of evidence, I'm not trying to say those are wrong. I'm just saying I'm not a judge. I'm not a court. I'm not trying to say who's right or wrong.
But by having him on, you do lend him your credibility, especially in the context of what is going on with him right now. You see, context matters. You don't exist in a vacuum. You are part of society.
Hang on, Felicia, hang on. We have lots of people on the show, many of whom we disagree with. By having someone on the show is not an implication that we agree with them on anything in particular. In fact, we've had several people on the show specifically because we disagree with them. We have had apologists for Islam. We've had apologists for Christianity. We had people on the show. We had Dan Arrell on the show to talk about punching Nazis specifically because we disagree with them on that. So when you say by having him on the show, that means we're taking his side on some particular issue, I don't think that's true.
But you didn't address this, right? You didn't go into the details of these accusations. You didn't.
I honestly,
did you push back on his story at all?
There are very few things that I would want to discuss less than BDSM, if I'm honest. And we didn't discuss
BDSM.
anything.
That's not what
about...
that is not. I've said this multiple times. The details about it are relevant because of consent. This isn't having a graphic discussion about consensual whipping. This is having a discussion or you did not push back then on his story at all. You just because you're squidgy about people being tied up. I don't understand. Like that's the silliest, most like cowardly way to approach this. I cannot even believe it.
Okay, well, I don't want to have a discussion with anyone about the details of BDSM. Perhaps that's cowardly. In that case, I plead guilty.
It's about consent. It's about the consent. It's about consent. And if you're afraid to discuss consent, that's a problem.
Hang on, Felicia. I have no interest in discussing what consent means in the context of BDSM with anyone.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you.
You're uninterested in discussing what consent looks like in a specific situation because you are uncomfortable. So therefore, you just don't even want to push back on his story at all.
Hang on, Felicia. If you wouldn't mind listening for a second, it's not that he gave us a story about what he thinks consent in a BDSM context means. And I refuse to push back. We never discussed any of those things at all.
Yeah, you didn't.
Let me just finish a sentence, please.
God.
If we made a list of all of the things I don't want to discuss, close to the top of the list is going to be the details of BDSM. So we didn't discuss any of those things at all. And if you think there's an obligation on me to discuss what consent means in the context of BDSM, then I'm just going to have to respectfully disagree, because I don't think there's an onus on me to discuss those details.
Okay, there is an onus when someone is credibly accused and you choose to have them on their show, when you know that they are trying to discredit their accusers and you do not push back at all, you lend them credibility. And because you're squidgy about sex, that is not a good enough reason to not push back on someone's story. See,
Felicia, there's something I'm saying. It's not going into your. I'm obviously not explaining this right. You keep saying we refuse to push back, as if David gave his perspective on here's what I think about BDSM consent, and we refuse to push back. I'll try and say this as clearly as I can. We never discussed the topic. It never came up. It's not like he gave his perspective. Okay.
What I'm saying is that you knew these accusations were out there. Can I finish a sentence now? Can I finish something?
Go ahead.
You knew these accusations were out there. You are aware of the context in which makes these things worthy of consideration. And you had him on your show at a time when you know he is trying to discredit his accusers and get onto platforms so that he can do that, whether or not you agree with them. And then you did not push back at all. You did not question his side of the story. You didn't discuss it at all. That is lending him credibility. That is giving him your platform. That is taking a side. That is what I'm saying.
No, sure, but our show is. I'm sorry. I'll let you come in, John. But I mean, our show is called the Free Thought Prophet, not the Free Sex Prophet. Okay, we weren't interested in the sex. We're not interested in discussing BDSM. If we were, I'm sorry.
You don't care about.
You can get loud and obnoxious all you want. Doesn't make you right. Okay, so maybe you should just take a break. Okay, get some air. Get some air. Yeah, that's what you keep saying. You can keep saying it doesn't make it right. Okay, so again, we are not the Free Sex Prophet. Right. We are not interested in BDSM. If we were, we would have. This is about
rape. How many times do I have to say it? He used BDSM and he raped her according to this woman.
So you say.
But you are uninterested and you do not care about this issue.
So you say. Are you done? Can I talk now? Do I need a safe word to talk?
Wow, that was really insensitive.
I'm sure it was, but that's basically what you've been doing to us right now because you won't let us talk. You just keep entering your points, okay? Let me finish my sentence, please, okay? If we wanted to talk about BDSM, we would invite an expert on BDSM, a sex pathologist or some sort of person who wanted to engage with on that, okay? There are plenty of atheists that have that forum already, okay? And actually, I do have a conversation with somebody about that currently in the works. Okay, so if we want to engage that, I'm going to engage that with that person, not fucking David Silverman, not insert any other name. Okay, so it doesn't fucking matter. We brought this person on to talk about other things. If he wants to talk about and interject his other things, that's fine. Whatever. We will deal with it as we do in the show. The only time that I engaged him with a little bit of back and forth was on one of the claims about the person, which I believe we're still talking about, and that relationship to their husband. Okay? Obviously, I can't go into detail on that because we don't want to talk about that person or that person's husband. Okay? You keep saying as if we have an obligation to deal into these topics, but yet that is not the premise of our show. That is not the premise of the discussion we are going to have.
So then why have him on at all? Why not have another very interesting person on when you know
fucking talk to? I should be allowed to say who I want to fucking talk to, and
you
not
are
have
allowed
to.
Thank you. You are. I'm sorry.
I'm allowed to say
you don't want to answer for the things you do. You don't want consequences.
Sure, I'll take the consequences. If people want to unsubscribe, they want to not watch, they want to do whatever, they can fuck off. That's fine by me.
Did something wrong, or tell you to your face, you did something wrong. You took a side. There you go. That's it. That's the end. You disagree.
You assume
no,
that I took
I have laid out.
I agree with you. You assume I think that he didn't do these things. You assume that I think that he's a horrible person, that he raped people, that he did all the things that he's accused of, and that I believe him otherwise. That's your assumption. you are making these assumptions.
No, I'm not. I have laid out exactly what I'm saying. That what the evidence is that we have, the context in which these accusations exist, and then you're choosing to have him on and not push back on that at all, not address that at all, is lending him your credibility and therefore taking a side. That is what I have said multiple times. That's it. And you have said multiple times, you don't care about the accusations.
No, I did not say that.
Yes,
Didn't say that even once.
No, I did not.
Oh my
Didn't
God.
say that even once.
No, I said I will talk to who I want to, no matter what anybody thinks. That's not the same thing.
You are allowed to do that, but I'm allowed to say, fuck you.
Sure.
And you are being a heartless asshole, both of you.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Hugs and kisses.
If I can jump in real quick, because it seems like we're spiraling here. I think everybody's kind of made their points fairly clear, so I don't know that the listener would necessarily get a lot more out of this other than a argument or what have you. If we can end with just one last question to both of you, and before this, I just want to thank you both for coming on. And,
I mean, is that really it? That's all we're going to do is talk about Silverman? Because I thought we weren't going to do that.
Well, yeah, I thought
that's what ended up being the whole fucking
yeah,
show.
that was the plan. But if you guys keep going, you're just going to argue with each other anyway.
Well, dude, what's the threshold of who should be platformed and deplatformed? I mean, I think that's the cusp of the issue, and we're not even discussing that. We're just trying to have out judiciously what this case is and have it in a social forum, and that's just seems to be really unfair.
Okay, see, now you've made it a broader topic when you're like, shouldn't we look at these by case basis?
Well, no, you said we have to look at this case by case basis, but it doesn't matter.
No, because you said you accused me of saying that every accusation we should believe, and I said no, I'm talking about this case specifically. And now you're saying, well, what's the threshold? Man, that goalpost just keeps moving.
I'm sorry, you're misunderstanding me, okay? Because I'm not talking about rape or sexual assaults or any of those things. I'm just talking about the idea that people are trying to govern who talks to who and when. It may not be on a specific.
No one's trying to do that.
Sure, yes, they are. Are you serious? That's what you've been arguing this whole time.
I'm telling you, you shouldn't do a thing. That's not. I have no power over you. I have no power over you. I have no power over you. I'm using my free speech to tell you you did a bad thing. You see how that works?
I'm interested to know what Robert's question was. I think you were listening to the back and forward, Robert, and you had a question.
Oh, yeah. Well, but I'm kind of interested in where we go from here, actually, because that is kind of the second part of the conversation, more or less. But I was going to ask you both, I know there's three of you, but to each side of this argument, if it came out to be a complete and obvious fact that you were wrong about... Let me rephrase it, because it's not necessarily that you're wrong. That almost has an ethical implication that I'm kind of trying to stay.
If it comes out for me, on my side, if it comes out that he is completely exonerated, which because of the nature of proving or disproving sexual assault, I don't see happening. But let's say for whatever reason, we do get that perfect evidence that of the multiple accusations that he is proven, he never assaulted anyone.
Right. In that unlikely hypothetical, my question to you would be, would you regret anything that you have said or done? And then also to John and Shamus, in the hypothetical that this guy just did it. And I mean, he's been doing this kind of junk for a long time. All these other guys that you've had on your show, they've done it too. Would you regret that? Like, would you regret having rapists on your show?
Sure, that's a fair question. So I would say it's probably happened already. We've had well over 200 episodes. So I have no doubt that some of the people that we've spoken to, if it's been shown that they did some horrible thing, I would hazard to guess, Robert, that maybe some of the people that have been on your show, unbeknownst to you, have done some horrible thing. And I guess having listened to Felicia, I can completely understand her perspective. So, I mean, personally, I think this is just an area where two reasonable people can have differing views. And my view on the matter is that when there's kind of allegations in the air, and it's person A says this and person B says that. It's just not my job to decide the details. It's not that I'm deciding one way or the other. It's just I'm not going to try and decide. So when you phrase the question in terms of what if you were wrong, there's no way for me to be wrong in this, because I'm not picking a side. And we made that very clear in our discussion with David. So I have to say, when Felicia says, David says this and you didn't push back, that wasn't the context of our discussion. The discussion.
That's not what I said. That's not even what I said. And
I'm sorry
and
if I'm
also,
putting words
that's
in your
not
mouth,
the
Felicia.
question.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
The question was,
there was something
what if you
along
found
the
out
line.
that he...
Sorry,
Oh my
Felicia,
goodness.
I won't interrupt you. I promise I won't interrupt you. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there was some discussion along the lines of us not pushing back. And I know you have lots of areas where if you were listening to David's side, you would push back. You have all of the evidence on the tip of your tongue, as I understand it, and I'm sure that's all provided in good faith. But from our perspective, the discussion wasn't one where David went through all of the details from what he did in whatever bedroom it happened in, and we didn't provide the other side. It's just we didn't talk about all of those things. So
Yeah, that was my point.
Yeah, so that's where I think we're talking past each other, or at least where we disagree, where you think there's an onus on me to get into the details of what happened and what consent means in BDSM, and
Or
I don't
not
think
have him on your show.
Hang on. I don't think I have an obligation to talk about BDSM with anyone, and you have a different perspective, and I think we just disagree on that.
God, no, that's not my point. That's not my point at all. It's not my point. My point was that if you are going to insist on having him on your show in the current moment with the context that we have, then yeah, you have a responsibility.
I disagree. In the current moment, in the
but
context
then by
that we have,
having him,
Sorry,
okay, you said you weren't going to interrupt me. Are you kidding
there
me?
is no obligation on me to talk about BDSM with anyone.
Are you kidding me?
Not
You
even
said
David
you
Silverman.
promise you won't interrupt me. The next part of the sentence was, if you are unwilling and you do not care about the accusations enough to discuss them because you don't want to take a side, then don't have him on your show. Because if you have him on your show and you do not push back on him on his story, and you don't and you have him on and you don't push back and you don't address any of that, you are lending him your credibility. Yeah, you have people on who you disagree with. Fine. That's a different discussion. But that's not why you had him on. No, you had him on so that he had a free platform to share his ideas. And you didn't push back. And that's the end of the day, is that you lent him your credibility. And you took a side. That's my whole point. That's the whole point of what I was saying, is that it doesn't matter whether you wanted to take a side or not. By your actions, you did. And by your actions, you showed that you do not care about these accusations ever. And you don't take them seriously ever. With this case, with Silverman, with Krause, with Carrier, with Shearer, you don't care. You don't care because you don't want to, and my, isn't it convenient for you to get some controversial figure on and then just not talk about the controversy, but you get to boost your platform and you lend your credibility to the people accused. That's what I'm saying works out. And this isn't controlling you, and this isn't trying to dictate to you. This is explaining that your behavior is bad.
Okay, I disagree.
Yeah, because you're a coward.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Why is he a coward?
No,
why is he a coward? Because he's allowed to
opinion.
disagree. For fuck's sake. God damn.
You're so put upon.
That's all you have is platitudes and insults? I mean, for fuck's sake, come on.
Oh, I think I've made it pretty clear why what you're doing is bad.
Oh, yeah, it's an opinion. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's an opinion with evidence to back it up. But you just want to talk to whoever you want to talk to without consequences or anything.
Felicia, could I ask a civil question? Could I ask a civil question? Is it the case that anytime anyone has an accusation made against him that everyone in the atheist community should immediately deplatform them?
Okay, see, you just did it again. I have never said that every time there's an accusation against somebody that you should immediately deplatform them. I said, with these specific cases, with the evidence presented to us, you should be able to make discernments about who you platform and why. And so that's the thing is like you keep saying that I'm saying everyone should just be believed, but when we talk about any specifics, then you go, well, I'm not a jury and executioner. See, conveniently what it comes down to you is you can have whoever you want on your show and the consequences be damned because you're not going to have to live with them. And the hurt and the pain that you perpetuate and the way that you delegitimize sexual assault accusations doesn't matter to you. And you don't care.
Can I ask another question?
I'm done.
Sorry,
I'm done.
Felicia,
I am done.
Felicia,
I am
can I ask one more question, please?
No, I am done.
Honestly, it's just a civil question. So it's one question is, you've said, and I understand what you said, that it's not the case that we have to deplatform everyone when an accusation is made, and you talked about the preponderance of the evidence. And my question is, who decides when we go over the threshold to say, right, we have to deplatform this person and not deplatform that person? How do we make that call? Which authority do I go to understand which person needs deplatformed and which doesn't?
I would say think of this as if you have been raped. Read the accusations, be brave, and read the details. And then pretend that you're someone who has been raped, and then consider how you would feel. Just use your own morals as a guide and take a stance morally. That's your authority. Is take a stance morally when you can consider something from an actual impact on people.
When you say when you talk about rape there, you're essentially assuming that the accusation is true. But what I'm saying is...
I'm not essentially doing that. I'm saying you read it, and then you take into consideration all the context. What was the source of this? And you read it and you think, how would I feel if I had been a victim? How would I feel about this person continue being platformed?
I understand, Felicia. And
I'm saying take it all in and then consider the impact that you might have and use that as a moral guide.
I understand, Felicia. You're saying take it all in, read all the evidence, and come to a view based on the preponderance of that evidence and things like that.
I'm saying make a behavioral decision. You don't even have to you don't have to make a public statement. You don't have to take a side. You can remain silent, which is actually neutral.
Yeah,
you can do that.
Hang on, Felicia. If you don't mind, let me just put a counterpoint to that, because essentially what you're saying there is that I should read the evidence and come to a view. And I understand that perspective, but I personally disagree. I think it's not my role to come to a view. And what I would also ask you, hang on. What I would also ask you,
I'm hanging up
Felicia,
now.
Honestly, I just want to civilly say a very simple thing to you that I hope you might consider. When you say that by having someone on the show, we are deciding one way or the other, what I would suggest to you is that we had invited David on the show before all this came to light. So if we just let me finish the sentence. Let me finish the sentence. If we decided to refuse him, then essentially to revoke our invite, that is also a decision. There's a decision to say we invited you on, David, and now you're not welcome on.
She bounced.
Okay.
So just to throw this out there, then two things. First off, if you're going to specifically look from one side of the argument, is that not confirmation bias? And shouldn't we consider, and I'm going to bring the moderator in because there's nobody else here at this point, but also for reasons that will be explained, if we're going to look at the alleged victim's point, should we not look at the alleged accuser's point? Rob, I believe you've been Me Too'd, so to speak, at one point.
Yeah. I've been accused of sexual harassment twice.
But
So I mean,
like, neither-
you open to sharing that real quick? I mean, I hate to put that on you. I know it's your show. You do what you want, but
I've talked about it on air before. But yeah,
yeah. So I mean,
both
how do you?
were
I mean, if you look at it from Silverman's shoes as you, how do you feel? I mean, if that's what we're going to do at this point.
The second time that it occurred, it was actually a dude, but it was in a workplace. He was just doing it because he was mad at me and I was his boss, and he was trying to find a way to get me fired. And everyone in management was aware of that, and my superiors were aware of it, and they just had to act as litigiously as they can because they didn't want to get a lawsuit for just telling him to get out of there. But so with that one, the agenda's clear. You see the motive. The first one, I don't even think there was really a motive. At least I never knew what it was. It was in high school. I got kicked out of high school because a girl said that I had made some comments about her tits, and that one was just random. I don't even know what reason she had to. I think if anything, it might have been an error where people said that I had said it maybe, and then whenever it kind of came down to it, she was upset and she felt like she needed to stand up for herself. But whenever it comes right to that one moment of, well, did you hear him say it? And that one moment you go, well, yeah, because now, I don't want to be like sounding like I'm accusing him and I don't even know if he did it or not, so I mean, obviously it was high school. I've forgotten more about that than anything else, but yeah, in that case, if we just take an accusation at face value and believe it, then there's a high likelihood that I am a sexual harasser,
And that Felicia is promoting you as a sexual harasser by coming on your show.
Oh, good point. Good point.
Well, for one, she doesn't know about that. And two, obviously, it's two different topics.
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, yeah, because... I was leaning...
brother, just say what you want, because it's got off the rails. Just whatever's cool.
Well, I was leaning more after hearing Silverman go on the Armin Navabi Atheist Republic show. I found what he said to be very convincing. But then after hearing what Felicia said today about, I didn't know about all the evidence against him. Also, that there were multiple people. So I mean, it really like. And even if I go farther back to kind of mix up Tarantino style, mix up timetables, whenever I first saw the BuzzFeed article, I was like, oh, well, yeah, he must have done it. So I literally went from, wow, Silverman's out there doing this stuff, to, oh, well, I guess he didn't. Because, I mean, like, what he said, I get, he had a year to prepare it, but, man, what he said really, it sounded legit as fuck. But then...
But as far as believing the people to Me Too, you're almost conditioned to believe them, right? Isn't that the other issue? And I'm not trying to attack the victims by any means, just to clear that up.
You're saying that we're
from my perspective, Rob, I've had the same experience of you, not on the Silverman case specifically, but a bunch of these other cases that go on and are played out in the media. And you hear one side and it sounds super convincing, and you hear the other side and it sounds super convincing. And my conclusion from that is this is why we have courts. And it's not possible for me as one individual to listen to one or other side and come to a conclusion.
I had a really good friend. I've only had maybe like 3 friends in my entire life, and this guy was one of them. And he got accused of touching his wife's kids, and it was a real big thing. The whole thing blew up. I don't think he ever did it. He just didn't seem like the kind of guy that would. And we talked about it just constantly after he got accused. I mean, I'm just seeing the guy just bawling his eyes out, saying, like, I love those kids. Those kids are out of my life now. I can't believe this happened. And his wife, a completely just horrible human being that I had seen, physically abuse him before. And she was always cheating on him. And, she didn't strike me as the kind of person that would have any problem making this story up and then being mentally just fucked up enough to actually believe her own lie, because that happens also. However, as soon as I had children, I stopped talking to him because the value of my kids to me and the idea of having this person over to the house regularly that had been accused of pedophilia, it's just that I placed my kids at such a high level of regard that I could give 2 shits about what he did at that point.
It's just that he was accused was just enough for me to say, I'm not risking it. And
I can understand that. I don't think anybody's going to do
Yeah, I got kids. I can understand that, Rob.
Yeah, and that's where I stand. Like, I wouldn't want my daughter to go hang out with David Silverman. I wouldn't, just because he's been accused. But at the same time, if we follow that logic, I'm a sexual harasser. You know what I mean? So like, it's when it comes to I know we can't blame someone for something if we don't have all the facts, but
Can I add one wrinkle to that, Rob?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we got accused of on Twitter or somewhere, Shamus can correct me if that's wrong, but we were told that it was dangerous to talk to
Twitter.
David. Now, dangerous in terms of, as you say, your kids, and I completely empathize with what you say. I wouldn't want to send my kids unaccompanied to someone who had an accusation against them that was, even if it was unproven or whatever. But just by having a conversation, I mean, to my mind, we're twisting the definition of dangerous immeasurably there. It's not like by having the conversation with David, we're going to cause rapes or something. How could that be the case? So, like I said before, we've had over 200 guests at this point. It's highly likely some of them have done awful things. Are we causing danger by having a discussion? I mean, to my mind, then we're kind of twisting the definition of the word dangerous, because, how could we be putting someone in danger by having this conversation?
That's true. Yeah, my analogy was more or less just trying to compare whether I think someone did it or not. Even if I think they didn't do it, my children having such a high value to me meant that I wouldn't even risk that.
Yes,
and I feel
I understand that.
What Felicia was saying is not necessarily that you're causing danger, but her point, and this isn't to say her point for her, but just the reason I was using that as an analogy is I think her point was that if you held rape victims in that high of a regard, then you wouldn't have someone accused of rape on your show.
No, that's a reasonable point, and my response to that would be that there's let's say you consider a school teacher. If a school teacher is the subject of an accusation, quite often the process is you get your put on leave until the whole thing's processed. If there's a potential that a school teacher is a danger to kids, they don't be left alone with kids while the whole thing's sorted out. That's understandable. But what we're not talking, like what Shamus and I did is not to put David Silverman in a hotel room alone with a young girl. We had a conversation on the internet. There's a difference between saying this person is the subject of an accusation, and while he's the subject of the accusation, he should be suspended from this role. That's one thing, but it's a different thing to say he's the subject of an accusation, therefore we should assume it's true and make sure he doesn't appear on any Skype conversations. That to me seems quite a different thing.
Fair enough. Guys, thank you so much for coming on and talking today. And
appreciate the opportunity, man. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thank you to Felicia, John, and Shamus. Thank you to Dave Blair at davefreesong.com/free music. Thank you to our patrons. You also can support this broadcast at patreon.com/right and learn more at therighttoreason.com. Next week, a psychologist and a historian will discuss the intricacies of human consciousness. Between now and then, remember that you have the right to reason.